Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to Boomer Time. I hope you've had a great week. Of course, I am your host, Nancy Cogar, and I'm an elder law and estate planning attorney. The reason I'm here on Boomer Time, of course, is to hopefully help you navigate the complexities of aging, caregiving, and even family relationships with clarity and confidence. As you also know, I'm always got to be on the lookout for suspicious things that come in the mail, offers that are too good to be true. Well, it seems like there's a lot of those recently, even in my mailbox. Got a couple this week. Invitations for nice, expensive meals. Some of them don't even say who's inviting you. I don't know if these are legit or not, but I just wanted to use it as a reminder to tell you check it out before you say yes to any kind of offer that's given to you like that. They're just everywhere. I had someone that I know from a bank here in town who sent me something this week too. I'm going to put that out there for you. It's just all over the place. And I want to protect you from getting scammed or taken advantage of, as you know. So today, I'm going to address an often painful, sensitive topic, and that is toxic parents. It could be toxic family members, it could be toxic whoever you're taking care of, right? Difficult to deal with, and I'm putting parents in there, right? Hey, wait a second, Nancy. My mom is a gem. Everybody loves her. She volunteers at the church. She reads to children after school. The homestead is a showcase at Christmas time. Well, that's great for you. I'm so glad that you have such a wonderful mama, and that sure is a genuine blessing. And I'm not going to take that away from you. The problem is not everyone has such a wonderful circumstance. So you're welcome to listen along, but I'm not talking to you today. I'm talking to those who have challenging relationships. Have you ever felt a tightness in your chest when you heard that phrase? You know, you're not alone. If you were talking about toxic parents, toxic relationships, many of my clients, even those that are in their 50s and 60s, even 70s, still struggle with parents who continue to be everything from uncooperative to downright mean, manipulative, critical, accusatory, controlling, demanding until they get their way, just downright challenging to frankly be around. It doesn't matter how old you are, these patterns can follow us throughout our lives. Well, I want to offer you some good news today. You have choices. I have choices. You can reclaim your peace, maintain your autonomy while you're protecting yourself and your future. How do you do that, Nancy? Well, I hope by the end of today's podcast, you'll have a few nuggets of wisdom to just kind of chew on and pull from this episode that will help you do that and maybe help you deal more with the circumstances that you're dealing with right now. So let's start by acknowledging the reality, right? People are difficult. Not everyone has the same foundation from which they operate on a day-to-day basis, right? Families can be just as tough. They can be a source of a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, downright misery sometimes, right? Sometimes you grow up in the same family, but the result has different individuals operating in life with different objectives, thought patterns, habits, motivations, or lack thereof. We all have challenges with people around us. You know, Having a family that you love to be around and loves and supports you is a true blessing. It's a fallen world, people. So not all of us have that. That's why I thought it was important to talk about these difficult issues that just make some of the challenges that you face as you age even more difficult. And you have to protect yourself. You have to maintain self care. I don't mean that in a selfish way. I just mean that, you have to be intact. It's not meant to destroy you. It's not meant to take things from you that you're not able to give. You have to be strong, but you have to maintain your own health because caregiver burnout really is something that's real. And part of the journey here is maneuvering through those challenges. And like I said, keeping yourself intact, figuring out how to love someone that's in a difficult place, and then maintain your own peace. So, what do you have to do? How do you navigate this? How do you deal with, I'm using the example of parents, right? Because there's a lot of caregivers out there that find themselves in the position of unpaid volunteer caregivers. Maybe you have parents that aren't the stereotypical model family, right? Do you hold true to your boundaries? Do you have core beliefs in those challenges? Do you stick to those? It's hard, right? If you're asked to care for a loved one, they may not see eye to eye with your values or truths. A lot of times they don't. I sit down with people all the time that talk about that. Maybe you've struggled a long time with these people and they haven't exactly been supportive. You might be just carrying around a lot of pain and hurt that, you've had since you were a youngin'. And now you find yourself in a position where you have to care for them. Does any of this sound familiar? Toxic individuals, as they've been dubbed, operate from a position of pressure. These so-called toxic individuals operate often from a position of pressure rather than gratefulness. And that is a hard place to be. Maybe they manipulate you with guilt or fear. A lot of times that comes from their own fear. It doesn't make it easy to deal with, but you know, you don't know what to do sometimes when this happens. And despite your care and support, they still criticize you. They never say thank you, no matter what you do. It makes you feel like maybe that you're never good enough. That's a hard place to come out of a perspective of a caregiver now, right? It can leave you exhausted, defeated, dreading, thinking about, obsessing about the next time you have to interact with these people. If this sounds familiar to you, I want you to know you're not alone. It's not your fault. These kind of toxic family dynamics are not easily changed. And it's not your job really to fix them, but it is your responsibility to protect your own mental, emotional, and financial well-being. Be honest with yourself. These people who come to see me often set plans in place to prepare for difficult people in the future, most of the time family members. They also plan to protect themselves from those difficult people getting in positions where they're able to make decisions for them. You got a plan, right? Isn't that what I always say? Difficult people, aka family members, can be a significant source of conflict, including legal conflict, which will ruin family relationships and cost a fortune for those involved. I've been there with certain clients, and I'm telling you, that's not the place you want to be. So it's my hope that with my counsel here today and my expertise, that you will find a higher road, a more peaceful path. Peaceful for you and peaceful for your family members. It's not easy if you're a caregiver in the midst of this difficulty, but I hope to tell you some truths today to hold on to and remember and function well and meet the goals that you feel are important to meet in caring for difficult people. I'll be right back. So everybody has a choice, right? Let's talk about choices. You do have a choice in these circumstances. That's important to you remember, and it's something easy to forget. So this is a tough idea for me to wrap my head around too. I won't lie. Whether it feels true or not, Everyone has the freedom to make their own decisions. You can't make decisions for someone else. You may try. You may think, they talk about that when you marry the wrong person, you think you're going to fix them. You can't fix them, right? So you can't change someone else's thought process. You can't change their decisions. I know this. I want you to operate from watching this podcast from a position of better awareness, understanding when it comes to making more educated decisions about your future and the aging process. Some of my own family members don't always make what I evaluate as good decisions. I may want better for them or what I think is better, right? In fact, I do. But, if that's not what they want, they're not going to agree with me. And I'm asking myself, or you be asking yourself, if you're trying to change what they want, to do the impossible. Right? It's a hard thing to kind of digest, but maybe even so, maybe what they want is not realistic. So I'd ask you, do you still have to do it? Do you have to extend yourself beyond your comfort or your ability financially? No, but it's not an easy thing to do, right? But that's our choice. It isn't their choice, but it's not easy. So definitely a word of context here, okay? Because if you're in a circumstance where a person is of diminished capacity, they can be more difficult on a whole different level, right? You have a duty at that point to protect that person as being incapacitated, right? And I don't mean to say love it or leave it. I'm talking about a different type of challenge and a difficult one, right? Because dementia can really change someone's personality drastically. So that's not what I'm talking about here. Anybody that's ill, disabled, or not in their right mind needs special care. That's not to be ignored. The point is, if you're in a circumstance like that or not, ask for help, right? You may not be the person that's best suited to take this task on. There are people available that can help. Today I'm focusing on the otherwise lucid, right? Plain old difficult individuals. If these are your parents, then, you're always the kid to them. So if you're likely to operate from a long line of experiences, right? You may be trapped or feel trapped in patterns of people pleasing or just staying quiet, tolerating the mistreatment just to avoid another conflict. And, unfortunately, I see this with clients who fear setting boundaries because they're worried that it's going to create a conflict and that'll ruin the family dynamic or cause their parents to blow up or disinherit them or not follow what they're suggesting. Here's the truth, right? You're an adult and you get to decide what kind of relationship you want to have with your parents. It's my hope, always as a counselor and as a lawyer, that you can find some place where you have peace. Because I believe ultimately that's really the best place to be. So if you have peace, you have an understanding, you can care for people within a reasonable kind of format that doesn't put them at risk, and you just kind of logically tell them what your limits are, or you ask for help. I'm going to talk about some of the help that's available. You may not be able to change these people, but you can change how you interact with them, how much access they have to you, right? If you're feeling like you're having a bad day, don't go sit there and talk with them, right? Go do something to relax. And then when you're in a better frame of mind, then go. Protect your peace, right? Even if you find yourself in a circumstance where there's a question or a choice as to whether you will accept caring for them. that is also your choice. Well, I talk about 10 practical strategies when I come back. Welcome back. Nancy Cogar, Boomer Time here. I'm so glad you're here. Hey, do me a favor if you haven't done this already. This is important. Would you please go to Facebook? Would you go to YouTube, wherever you listen to the podcast? And if you haven't already, like the podcast and subscribe. It makes a big difference in me trying to grow this community. And you are important to me. I also want more people to have access to the information that I'm sharing here. There's so many people come back to me and say, hey, you know what? I never knew that. Or, you talked about this and I could really relate to that. Share it with a friend. Let me know how it's impacted your life. I would love to hear that. So please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks in advance, okay? So let's explore 10 practical strategies, right, to surviving and thriving with difficult parents. I'm using as the example here this week. If you're a caregiver and you've got a challenging situation with people that are not exactly cooperative. Well, number one, stop trying to please them. You're not going to. If they are difficult people, they're going to be difficult and probably often impossible to please. So don't be looking for gratitude or acceptance from them, okay? That's going to make you feel trapped and it's going to drain your joy. Your joy is not dependent on how they respond to you caring for them. If you're caring for them, that's because care is an important aspect of life. Like you love these people, even though they're difficult, and you want to protect them and make sure they're well cared for. That's a wonderful motive. And if they don't appreciate it or don't articulate that, it doesn't mean anything about you. But it is difficult. But don't look for that acknowledgement there. Here's another important thing. Set and enforce those boundaries. Boundaries aren't mean. Everybody thinks because if you say no occasionally, then you're being difficult or you're being mean. Guess what? If you say yes to everybody, they're going to be no more you. So boundaries are necessary, okay? They define how people treat you. If you're a doormat, they're going to treat you like a doormat, okay? So remember, it's okay to limit your contact. It's okay to say no, okay? It's okay to spend some time by yourself and spend some time in prayer, right? Spend some time in meditation. Spend some time at the gym, It's all important for your own health, and you're in a difficult position. So, especially if it involves, your mental health, you're going to have to be in this for the long run. So maybe ask yourself, what boundary do I need to keep with my parents? This is not an easy question. Maybe it's financial boundary, right? That you need to set. That's important to do. Maybe it's a circumstance where you need to hire a professional to act as a caregiver, part-time or full-time, because you can't take off from work. It's too financially draining on you, or there's something else, in your family that you need to take care of. That's okay. What's one step I can take towards setting that, right? And if it's too much to bear, there is professional help available, okay? And I would say for yourself and for your older family member, parent, it's really not something you want to ignore, okay? So there are therapists, there are counselors, there are legal counsel that can provide guidance, coping strategies, a safe place to talk about your feelings. There are also lots of support groups. I've met with a lot of those groups, even here in town, that meet together, you share similar challenges, and it helps you to feel connected with someone. It makes a big difference. Sharing those experiences can be validating and helpful. Okay. Hopefully, you have a community of friends or, trusted family members. Sometimes people are going it alone as the only family member involved in this. But if you've got friends, there are so many people going through these types of things that, you know, you can find someone that you can receive and probably provide some emotional support and perspective. Now, on the far end, the extreme end, if you're in distress, there are lots of ways you can reach out for help, whether it's a hotline, um, you know, helplines, many organizations. And I've listed a lot of these on the website because, I love resources. And these guys can offer support to family members that are dealing with these really difficult issues. The worst thing is not to do anything. Okay. And of course, then there's legal help. So if there's planning that needs to be done, boundaries that need to be put in place, decisions that need to be articulated in a legally enforceable way, worse yet, if there's abuse, you need to contact a lawyer. That may be necessary. Okay. Professional caregivers, like I said, they meet the need. Don't punish yourself if you're not the best person for the job. Find someone, interview people, hire someone to care for your parents. I'm using that example, of course, within their budget, okay, not yours. So oftentimes, I've seen this, oftentimes I find that difficult individuals who are mean, downright ugly to family members are sweet as pie to the independent caregivers. It may make you look at them wondering whether it's the same person, right? If it works, don't worry about it. It's a better option. You've got the care, you've got the sanity, right? Trying to fix your parents is just going to leave you drained and resentful. You don't want to be like that. Focus on what you can control, your choices, right? Your responses, your boundaries. You don't owe your parents all your personal details, especially if they'll throw them back at you and use them against you. So, what feels safe to share with them? Plan a visit, plan what you're going to talk about, have the right mind frame, and always have an exit. That's what my husband always says. He says, when you come in, know when you're leaving. I'm not so good at that, but, it makes sense. When things deteriorate, or if they do, give yourself permission to leave. You don't have to be sitting there and taking it. You just need to keep the peace. So if you can create a signal with your partner, like Carol Burnett used to do, maybe leave when needed before, it deteriorates. Ask yourself, what is your plan? Again, comes down to planning, people, to exit a potentially toxic situation in a way that keeps your peace, keeps your calm, and avoids conflict. Don't try to reason with difficult people because most of the time they're irrational or emotionally mature. They may be drunk or on drugs, right? You can't talk sense with people like that. But be assertive and avoid power struggles. I remind my clients you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to, right? That's your choice, right? And you're not at their beck and call, right? They can't expect you to drop everything for them just like that. You can say no. You're not their 24/7 helper, therapist, or emotional punching bag. I know this sounds a little strange to be talking about this stuff, but this is real, people, right? How does it feel to recognize that you're not obligated to meet every demand? You can't, right? You can't. So, how can you release that guilt that you may feel sometimes in those circumstances? Well, you don't need to spend holidays with them. You deserve holidays that are peaceful and not stressful. It's okay to create your own family traditions. That's normal. Celebrate with friends or other family members. If your family doesn't like family gatherings, skip the family gathering. What tradition would you like to change and reduce the stress? Think about it. Do you dread Thanksgiving every year? Well, maybe this Thanksgiving can be a little bit different. And you don't have to get into it with anybody. Just make a different plan. Take care of yourself. Toxic families are just downright draining. And you need to prioritize your well-being because being a caregiver is an extremely difficult position to operate from. So eat well, rest, move your body, and connect with positive, encouraging people. Don't get drained down to E and be running on fumes. That's not the way to operate. So look for those therapy and support groups if you do. So ask yourself, what do I need right now to care for myself? As an elder law attorney, I want to address another layer here. So if your toxic parents are aging, and, I feel guilty saying toxic parents, but they're out there, right? And you may feel pressure to take care of them physically, financially, or legally. Maybe you're not strong enough to lift them, get them in the car. You can get help. You are not obligated to put your health or your finances at risk. That's a tough one to wrap your mind around. And you can decline to serve as their power of attorney if you're just not up to the job. The important thing is to communicate that before it becomes an emergency, and then they can get somebody else to serve. And if they're threatening you with leaving you out of the will, any of that kind of stuff, don't worry about it. Planning ahead is going to protect you. I think your quality of life will be improved by being more sane and honest in your relationships and not putting yourself in a circumstance that you just can't maintain or sustain, right? Get some estate planning in place, as I always say, so it reflects your values, not your guilt. And consulting someone like me, an elder law attorney, to understand your rights and boundaries legally is essential. So this is not an easy topic, but you're not powerless, right? You can set boundaries. You can choose what you share. You can create some distance. You can take some downtime. Remember, reclaiming your peace is not selfish. It is necessary. It is critical. If you need support in a legal setting as far as boundaries are concerned while caring for your parents, protecting their assets, protecting your assets from toxic kind of family demands, make sure to sit down with someone like me, an elder law attorney, because we are here to help you navigate through these tough situations while preserving really your own dignity and peace and your parents' dignity, because you don't want to be in a circumstance where it's caustic. Thanks for joining me today on Boomer Time. I'm trying to think about issues that are important that will be helpful to you. So if this episode resonated with you, like I said before, share it with a friend, right? Leave a review. I want to help more people build lives of peace and intentionality, okay? During one of the most difficult times in your life, when you're aging and when all these issues come up. So until then, I am Nancy Cogar, and I'm reminding you to decide what kind of relationship you want to have with your parents, and also that you deserve a life of peace. Take care and keep taking steps to protect yourself and those you love, and I'll see you soon.